A Tuesday sun strained through a veil of spring haze, turning the Rockies into ghostly silhouettes. Before I knew my life had tilted off its axis, I tied my laces, thinking it would be just another quiet morning lap around the park. Washington Park in Denver is a different kind of chapel at dawn. Geese skittering across the lake, runners carving steam through the cool air, dogs dragging their sleepy owners toward a patch of wet grass they've already blessed 100 times. I'm 59, a retired CPA with a lower back that clicks when I breathe too deeply, and a body that negotiates every mile like a peace treaty. My ritual is simple. Up at 6:30, black coffee, stretch the hamstrings that refuse to learn, and walk the outer loop twice before the sun climbs and the day decides what it will take from me. I set my navy cap, tapped my pocket for keys and a slim water bottle, and left quietly so I wouldn't wake Lauren. She'd closed at the boutique last night, late, spring inventory, came home smelling like tissue paper and new fabric, drifted off before the weather report finished lying to us. Our little one, Sophie, 6 years old, all elbows and missing front teeth, slept in her lavender room with a stuffed snow leopard under her chin. Our house on South Pearl had that pre-dawn hush that only means two things in my world: peace or a storm hiding its thunder. On my second lap at 7:43, funny how shock brands time into bone, my phone buzzed with Sophie's name. She never calls me in the morning, not ever. "Hey, Peanut," I answered, smiling without meaning to. "You're up early." "Daddy," she whispered, voice fuzzy with sleep and something else. "There's a man in the living room." Everything in me tightened like a pulled parachute. I slowed to a stop under the cottonwoods and looked at the lake as if it could explain arithmetic to a man who'd forgotten how to count. "A man?" I kept my voice steady out of habit. "What do you mean?" "He has a blue shirt. They're talking real quiet. Mommy said you wouldn't be back for a while." Sophie's innocence turned the words into a blade with a pink handle. The path tilted. I tasted metal. I told her to stay in her room, to keep the door closed, to put on her headphones and listen to the song about the silly cat she liked. "I'm coming home," I said, and the steadiness in my voice was a lie that only fathers tell well. I jogged. Then I ran. Across the grass, past a couple doing lunges like statues in a museum, through the parking lot with its cracked white lines, I ran like I was trying to get back to a version of my life I had left unlocked. The blocks home felt longer, the maple trees taller, the storefront windows too reflective, daring me to see what a man looks like when he understands he's been shut out of his own narrative. Our bungalow looked perfectly unbothered in the soft sun, porch swings still, porch plants begging for water, the waning chalk hopscotch Sophie had drawn a week ago bleeding pastel on the stoop. In the driveway, Lauren's silver CR-V. Across the street, a white Camry I didn't recognize. The key trembled at the door. I breathed. I went in. They were on our oatmeal-colored couch, the one we'd argued over in a West Elm until we realized we were both right, and it was comfortable. Lauren in a soft green sweater, hair up, a coffee cup in her hands that I knew by weight because I'd bought the set when we still remembered anniversaries. Next to her, a man I'd never seen. Mid-40s, trim, gray at the temples, a powder blue Oxford rolled at the sleeves. He leaned close. She laughed low and shamefaced, covering her mouth like she did when she loved the joke too much. I didn't recognize my own house. It took them a few heartbeats to see me. When they did, everything in the room changed shape. Lauren's smile fell through the floor. The cup slipped, shattered, coffee arcing like a dark bird and then splattering into a pattern I'll never forget. Proof that the world breaks loudly and looks like nothing special afterward. "David," she said. My name looked unfamiliar in her mouth. The man stood and offered his hand like we were about to discuss refinancing. "I'm Ethan Cole." I didn't take it. I glanced past him to the stairs where I could hear Sophie's feet whispering, felt the tilt of a small planet that relies on me to keep it steady. "Who are you to my wife, Ethan?" I asked, because I could still ask a question without sobbing. Sophie appeared at the landing, hair a bright messy halo, her stuffed snow leopard dangling by the tail. "Daddy," she said, small and brave, "why is everyone being quiet?" I scooped her up because my arms knew what to do when my brain did not. Go to your room, Bug, I murmured. I'll be right there. Pinky promise. Ethan cleared his throat. I should go, he said to Lauren, and she nodded like a person checking out at a register. He slipped past me without touching, carrying that expensive cologne I suddenly hated, and the front door closed on both of us. The silence after another man leaves your living room smells like hot coffee and old paint. How long? I asked, once Sophie's door clicked and Peppa Pig started oinking through her headphones, the sound like bubbles under ice. Lauren stared at the tile where the cup had shattered. David, how long? She swallowed. 8 months. I sat because my legs didn't belong to me anymore. 8, I repeated, a clean number. 2 loops around the sun too short to call a year, long enough to learn the names of secrets. Do you love him? I asked. I don't know, she said. And I believed her because there's a kind of honesty that arrives when lying would take too many muscles you've already exhausted. I feel awake with him. She looked up at me through tears that made her eyes the green of our first apartment's ugly couch. David, when was the last time you asked me what I wanted? When was the last time we wanted anything at the same time? This is not an essay, I said, voice breaking. This is our house, our daughter, our Tuesday. A small whale song from upstairs. Daddy, I'm hungry. Trauma sits in the room and stares while you flip pancakes. It doesn't clap when you get the first one right. It doesn't pause for grace. We're going to make breakfast, I told Lauren without looking at her. And then we'll talk when she's safe again. Sophie stirred batter with the concentration of a surgeon and got flour on her nose. She babbled about a class bunny we were going to foster next month, and I kept my voice light, and Lauren wiped counters like she could erase a story from a surface. When Sophie said, Mommy, your eyes are leaking, Lauren laughed and said, It's the onions, though there were none in sight. When the plates were sticky and Sophie was humming and the house remembered how to sound normal, I caught my reflection in the microwave. A man who plans, a man who budgets grief, a man who has enough love in him to be careful, even now. If you've made it this far with me, this stranger in your headphones or on your screen, tell me where you're listening from. Sometimes it helps to know what cities hold the people who sit with you in the dark. And if this kind of story finds you, leave a small kindness for it. I'll keep telling the truth if you want to hear it. After breakfast, the house pretended. Dishes in the sink murmured normal. Sun on the dining table sketched squares where Sophie lined up her crayons. Lauren and I stood like tall furniture in the kitchen, and every sentence we tried to build collapsed under its own weight. 2 weeks, Lauren said at last, eyes on the tile grout as if the answer might be etched there. I can stay with my sister, think without running on adrenaline. You keep the house steady for Sophie. Then we decide. Decide what? I asked, like a man asking the ocean when it will stop. Whether there's anything left to rebuild, she said, and she didn't reach for my hand. I didn't offer it. I wanted to ask 20 questions. About logistics, about therapy, about how many secrets were actually in the room. But the voice upstairs was what mattered. I nodded once, the kind of nod you give to a surgeon before the anesthetic flows. When Sophie settled in with a cartoon, I went to the small office I'd built out of the old guest room. Diplomas on the wall, a succulent I kept forgetting to rotate, a desk that had never held anything too heavy to lift. I typed his name because it felt like a step that would make the ground stop pitching. Ethan Cole, LinkedIn, regional rep for a high-end apparel line. Photos of him in hotel ballrooms, a smile that practiced sincerity, quotes about unlocking potential and living in the yes. Instagram, tasting menus, a martini with a bartender's hand blurred behind it. A bouquet of wildflowers captioned, Simple things, deep roots. 3 weeks ago, Lauren had arrived home with that exact bouquet, calling it a sweet in-store surprise from a customer. I had said, nice, and gone back to the box scores. I closed the laptop because the internet has no guardrails for men with shaking hands. My brother called like he could hear water in my mouth. Dave, you okay? You sound like a guy whose house is on the other side of a glass wall. Hypothetical, I said. If you found out your wife, not hypothetical. Nick doesn't bother with doors when there's a window. Where are you right now? In the house. With Sophie. Saying my daughter's name was the only time my throat didn't burn. "You want me to get on a plane?" he asked. "Because that's who we are in this family. Action first, analysis while we're buckling in." "No, just—" I swallowed. "Tell me I'm not an idiot for missing what was right there." "You're not. You were busy holding up the parts of the world you thought were yours to hold." He blew out a breath. "Don't do anything permanent today. Your hands aren't yours right now." The afternoon sagged into the kind of quiet that turns a house into an archive. Lauren returned at 2:30, hair pulled back, a sweater I'd always loved, and a bag already half filled upstairs. Sophie slept on the couch with a marker uncapped in her fist and a rainbow sketched on the back of her hand. We sat at the kitchen table like we had before every big decision. Mortgages, school choices, the year we bought a used Subaru and a crib in the same week. This felt like a mercy killing of a ritual. "I didn't plan for it to happen this way," she said, voice raveling. "I didn't plan anything at all. That's part of the problem." "When did we stop wanting the same future?" I asked. And the question hung there like a wind chime no one had the heart to take down. She didn't answer. Maybe there wasn't an answer. Maybe it was a long, slow leak covered by rugs and furniture. We made dinner anyway. Chicken roasted with lemon slices, broccoli that wore cheese to make a case for itself. I watched Lauren help Sophie wash soap from between her fingers, listened to them talk about a girl named Tasha who was learning to whistle, and it was like hearing recordings of your own voice, familiar and uncanny at once. Sophie's bedtime was a collaborative ritual we'd choreographed in a decade. I read, Lauren tucked. She picked the stuffed animal that would be vice president of dreams. Tonight, Sophie asked for the book where the bear tries to be brave, and I stumbled through a story that hit too close to home. After, Lauren kissed her forehead, then stood in the doorway for a long breath like she was memorizing the outline of her. In the kitchen, we faced the practical. "Breakfast is cereal with banana and honey," Lauren said. She hates crusts. Thursday is swim day. Goggles are in the red bag by the door. Don't let her do the cart by herself at King Soopers or you'll end up with 4 boxes of fruit snacks. I made notes like I was taking over a client's file. "What about Friday?" I asked, to keep her in the room longer, to keep the structures from collapsing as fast as they wanted to. "Friday's show and tell. She wants to bring the snow globe from Estes Park." Lauren's smile was small and broke me. "Tell her she has to hold it with 2 hands. I walked her to the door because that's what you do when you're still a certain kind of husband. She rolled a suitcase that knew her softness and her secrets, and I hugged her like I was saying goodbye to a ghost that finally realized it was one. "Take care of our girl," she whispered. "Always," I said. "And Lauren," I stopped. There wasn't anything that would land right. She nodded anyway, as if she'd heard what I couldn't say in a language we no longer spoke. The taillights faded down our block. I stood on the porch with the porch light on too early, and I understood how a father becomes a lighthouse. Morning came like a prank. My 6:30 alarm sounded, and out of muscle memory, I reached for running shoes. Then I remembered who makes breakfast, who braids hair, who knows where the blue socks live. Sophie rolled away from the light like a tiny vampire. "I want Mom," she whimpered, and the sentence had 1,000 barbs. "Mom's helping Aunt Rachel after her surgery," I said, because that's the story we'd agreed on, and it wasn't even a lie. Rachel had indeed had her appendix out last month. "She'll call tonight." I turned bath time into a negotiation about rubber ducks and who gets to pour the water. I got the temperature wrong twice and forgot the towel she likes because it smells like beach. I combed gently and still somehow snagged a snarl that made her suck in air. "I'm learning," I told her, which I realized I was really saying to myself. In the kitchen, I learned where the honey lived and how bananas bruise when you don't cradle them like something alive. I poured cereal too fast and it surfed the rim like a daring trick. Sophie gave me a look like I was a sub in a class she loved. "Mom cuts the banana into circles, not moons," she said. I sliced them thinner. She nodded, gracious in victory. We were late because of course we were. I forgot the orange folder. I found one shoe in the dryer, still warm and damp from a rain-soaked puddle jumping incident. I brushed her hair in the car with an apologetic grimace while other parents did not stare, and that felt somehow worse. At drop-off, a woman with a messy bun and a tattoo of a tiny planet on her wrist smiled. "First solo morning?" she asked. I must have had rookie on my forehead. "How can you tell?" I adjusted the crooked ponytail like a man pretending to be a hairstylist in the mirror of a compact. "We've all been there. You'll get ninja good in 2 weeks." She stuck out her hand. "Tasha's mom." "Sophie's dad," I said, and the words landed less strangely than I expected. At home, the house was a held breath. I washed dishes to give my hands a job. I called Lauren to fill in the blanks of a life I should have known better. She picked up on the second ring, voice careful but warm, when she heard Sophie had laughed at breakfast. We listed things: swim days, snacks that won't return untouched, bedtime songs, and the call ended without a fight, like 2 air traffic controllers managing parallel skies. At 5:30, I was early for pickup. Sophie came out holding a drawing of 3 stick figures standing in front of a yellow house. The tallest wore a blue cap that could only be mine. All 3 had smiling faces that crushed me and saved me in the same second. "Mrs. Marks taught us the word missing today," she said in the car, legs swinging, sneakers bumping the seat. "It means when your heart hurts because someone isn't here." "That's a good definition," I said, counting streetlights, because if I counted pain, I'd drive into the sun. "Do you miss Mom?" she asked. The rearview mirror framed her face like a painting. "Yeah," I said. "Do you?" "Uh-huh." She thought a second, then added, "But pizza helps." That night, after homework that wasn't, and bath time that was, after a story, the bear again, braver this time, I sat with the quiet. It had sharp corners. The phone buzzed with a number I didn't know. "David," said a man's voice, careful, practiced. "It's Ethan. Could we meet?" Every muscle in me stood up fast. "No," I said reflexively. "There are things you deserve to know," he said, and there was a fatigue in it that didn't feel like a gambit. About Lauren. About timelines. I didn't owe him mercy. I owed myself clarity. "Tomorrow," I said. 9 a.m., Happy Leaf on Platte. "Thank you," he said, and I hated that my relief sounded like his. I lay awake late, tracking every sigh the house made. The fridge hum was a long, low confession. The pipes whispered. A neighborhood train threaded the mile like a seamstress. Around 1 a.m., the truth braided itself into a simple rope. I could be angry later. Tomorrow I needed to be awake. Happy Leaf's windows capture the morning like a jar. The light poured in around plants that have never known neglect. Ethan was there early, or maybe I was late to my own story. He wore a navy polo and jeans that said, "I own a steamer." He stood when I approached, and we shook hands this time because I wanted to look straight at what had wrecked me. "I didn't know she was married," he said quickly, as if speed could get him ahead of the facts. "I swear to you, she told me you were separated, some sort of modern arrangement. I was an idiot to believe it." I said nothing because I was taught not to fill silences I didn't know. He slid his phone across the table. An Instagram post, Lauren's account, a wine glass backlit by the kind of restaurant lighting that flatters guilt. The caption, "Sometimes you have to choose your next beginning." Tag, Washington, D.C. 2 days ago. "She told me she needed space," Ethan said, voice tight. "She's with someone else, a buyer, Brian Foster. I found him through the tags, Look, you shouldn't be the last to know." The floor of my mouth turned to salt and pennies. "You came here to tell me my wife cheats on the man she cheated with. I came here because I realized I let myself be used, and because—" He took a breath. "If you're going to step out of something this big, you deserve to step out facing the right direction." I borrowed his phrasing because it fit in my throat. I texted Lauren's sister Rachel from the parking lot. "You with Lauren?" A beat. Then, "No, honey." She said she needed time alone. "You okay?" I typed sure and deleted it. Typed fine and deleted that too. Then, "Thanks. Kiss Sophie for me. We're thinking of her. My mother's kitchen always smells like onions in the past." "She did what?" she said, knives steady even as her jaw tightened. "Leave Sophie with me tonight. Go do what you need to do, but do it like the man I raised, not like the man Payne wants you to be." I called an attorney I knew from a dentist's waiting room of all places. The city is a pinball machine where every bounce counts. "Amanda Pierce," she said. She didn't say Eskiers or at law. She had me come in at 3, skimmed facts, asked for receipts, literal ones, credit charges, dates, and told me to begin a ledger because my brain would not be trustworthy for a while. "Don't make threats," she added as I stood. "Make decisions." By 5:15, I'd booked a 7:30 flight to D.C. I scrolled hotels and landed on the Willard because I have a weakness for places with lobbies that remember wars and wedding proposals. I kissed Sophie on the crown so softly her hair rustled. "Grandma," I said, "movie night and pancakes in the morning?" "Chocolate chips, got it," Mom said, pressing a 5 into Sophie's palm like we were headed to a carnival. "For the vending machine," she whispered, "just in case." At the airport, everything felt like everyone else's life. People in business suits talking synergy at gates, a teenager with a hoodie and a heartbreak, a pilot whose mustache had its own tenure. I texted Nick, "Going to D.C." He called before the message read. Receipt appeared. "You want me to meet you there?" he asked, not joking. "Stay put," I said. "I need to know I did something hard by myself." "Call me after," he said. "Call me before, during, after. Call me to breathe." At the Willard, the front desk pretended to be a front desk. "Good evening," I said, my voice unfamiliar in marble. "I'm here to meet my wife, Lauren Harper. I seem to have misplaced the room number." The clerk did the gentle frown, glanced, then patted empathy back into his expression. "No Mrs. Harper registered, sir. Perhaps under a companion?" "Brian Foster," I said, the words tasting like a spelling test. "Room 1018, the key said. The elevator hummed like a confession booth. My heart had a drummer, and the drummer had arms. I didn't have a plan for the door. I knocked anyway. Steps. A voice that used to sing along to Tom Petty in my kitchen. The latch turned. "David?" Lauren said. "Just my name, the way you say fire when it's already half the house." Behind her, a man in hotel lazy shorts stood up from the couch, startled, decent enough to look down. "I'm Brian," he said, like he wished he weren't. "I didn't know." "She's married," I said. "We have a daughter who asks if the word missing has a plural." Lauren's knees went faint in the doorframe. She reached for words like she was in a pool and the edge was farther than she'd judged. "I can explain." "No," I said, and I was surprised at the mercy of it. "You can't. Not in a way that does anything but rewrite the past, and I remember it too well." "I'm sorry," Brian said, "because decent men still exist. If I had known—" "You didn't," I said, and his mouth trembled around relief and shame. "It's not your job to save me from my wife." I looked at Lauren. In the hall's mirror, the three of us were a joke without a punchline. "Tomorrow," I said, "Amanda Pierce will file. I'll ask for custody. You can argue, but save us both money. I won't be angry in front of Sophie. I won't teach her to hate her mother. I will teach her to love the truth." Lauren put a hand to her mouth the way she does when she's going to throw up or confess. "I never meant to." "You meant whatever you needed to mean to get where you wanted to go," I said, and surprised myself with the accuracy of it. I didn't slam the door. I left it moving on its own, a slow close that didn't need me to add drama to authenticity. In the lobby, a couple took a selfie under a chandelier. A concierge pointed at a tour map with a pen that had seen 100 other lost people. Outside, D.C. was humid and earnest. I exhaled and felt my lungs finally take the shape of the air. On the red-eye home, the cabin lights dimmed to twilight and everyone negotiated with sleep. I didn't. I watched the blinking wing light, count out seconds, and thought about on-ramps. How you merge because you must, not because you know what's waiting in the lane. At DIA, the moving walkway carried me farther than I deserved. Outside, Colorado morning light is honest. Nothing hides in it. I drove to Mom's in a fog of coffee and exhaustion, and held Sophie like I had a left and a right arm for the first time in days. "Did you see Mom?" she asked, because there are questions that hurt more the smaller the person asking. "I talked to Mom," I said. We're going to make some new plans that keep you safe and loved. That part isn't changing. That part never changes. Amanda filed papers on a Monday that had the audacity to be beautiful. Lauren didn't contest. I don't know if it was shame or strategy or the sudden realization that a life built on improvisation runs out of lines. Her attorney asked for fair visits and a financial arrangement that didn't pretend money can parent. We agreed to what the law asked and the child deserved. I boxed 3 sweaters and a toothbrush I'd bought for Lauren on a road trip to Santa Fe years ago. I placed them by the door with a sticky note. Rachel's? I did not write I miss you because I missed the person I thought she was, and grief like that is a different animal that doesn't eat apologies. Sophie and I built a calendar with markers and stickers, blue stars for school days, green dots for swim, tiny gold hearts for just us rituals like Friday pizza, Sunday pancakes, Saturday library. The act of choosing colors did something religion could never do for me. It made the future look like something I might live in. At night, when Sophie slept without asking for one more story or one more cup of water or one more nightlight, I sat at the dining table and added to a growing list titled, Things I Didn't Know, where the extra toothpaste is kept, that the dance studio prefers plain leotards, that Sophie is mean when she's overtired and I am too, that grief eats salt like it's popcorn, that my body can want to run at 6:30 a.m., even when the rest of me doesn't want to move again ever. Lauren called once, twice a week, voice thinner each time. She checked Sophie's homework progress like she had a hand on a wheel she'd let go of. She asked me if we were eating, sleeping, laughing. I said yes, because we were, and because I won't punish my daughter by litigating my pain into a daily call. Sometimes the ache came as a smell, her shampoo in the bathroom rug, citrus and something once called sea salt. Sometimes as a shadow, 2 hooks on the back of the door, only one holding a coat. Sometimes as a reflex. I reached for my phone to share a small triumph, Sophie tying her shoes with a loop that stayed, and remembered that not every victory needs to be announced to the person who taught you an entirely different kind of loss. When the court date arrived, I wore the suit I bought for funerals because I wanted to honor the dead. Amanda spoke my life into legal grammar. Lauren sat with her hands folded and a face that did not ask me for anything. The judge had the soft sternness of someone who has seen everyone at their least curated. Custody, finances, a few hours of words that confirm what you already knew in your marrow. Outside the courthouse, a wind lifted the trees into applause they didn't mean. I stood on the steps, tie knotted a little off-center, and breathed for what felt like the first time in the same life where I had learned how to hold my daughter's soaked towel out without drenching my socks. Summer in Denver is a benevolent dictator. It tells you to go outside and be grateful. Sophie and I listened. We burned through library reading logs like they were missions. We'd hit Wash Park in the evenings, loops and loops, her bike's training wheels clicking little applause for every wobble conquered. We learned how to make eggs without bits of shell. We invented a game called Banana Detective, where we chased the ripest one like it had clues inside. Her class's science fair came with a project, the solar system. We sat cross-legged on the dining room floor, glitter everywhere like a small universe was already exploding. Venus is the hottest because of greenhouse gases, she told me, repeating Mrs. Marks. I helped her punch holes in fishing line, planet by planet, Mercury shy, Jupiter a loud uncle. We hung our small cosmos from a coat rack painted white, a mobile that caught every draft of our shared life. Second place ribbon. Sophie held it like a medal, and I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. Did we lose? She asked, curious, not broken. We won a lot, I said. We won glue that finally worked, and a Saturn ring that didn't fall off, and a dad who learned you can't use the good scissors for wire. That night, Nick flew in for the weekend on a whim disguised as a cheap fare alert. He stood on the porch in a hoodie like a teenager, knocking a rhythm that used to mean Mom's not home in 1988. You're different, he told me after pizza, after Sophie fell asleep with planet stickers still on her socks. Not like better because pain did that to you. Just, you're more in your life than around it. I learned how to cut bananas into circles, I said, and we both laughed because sometimes the most ordinary sentence lands like poetry. I used to think you settled, he said later on the porch, the street quiet as breath. Now I think you were working on the wrong puzzle. Same amount of effort, wrong picture on the box. We talked into the kind of night that pardons men for telling the truth to each other. He asked if I'd date again, and I said I didn't even know how to sit at a bar without finding a sports score to shelter under. He asked if I still love Lauren. I said I loved the idea of symmetry and the person I tried to be with her. That wasn't the same thing as love. He nodded like an older brother and a younger one at once. On Sunday, we made pancakes the way Sophie likes, dinosaurs, hearts, and a single lopsided star. Nick tried to flip one in the air, failed magnificently, and Sophie laughed so hard she smacked the counter with both hands, joy spilling everywhere, a thing you towel up and keep forever. If you want to know who you are, try therapy. If you want to know who you've been pretending to be, let your therapist ask a question and then shut up for 9 full seconds. Dr. Patel had plants in his office that looked like they did not forgive easily, and a couch too comfortable for lies. What did you believe relationships were for? He asked. Stability, I said, too fast. Reliability. And what did you use stability to avoid? He waited while I found the door to a room I didn't want to open. Risk, I said. Disappointment. My own reflection. Sophie had a therapist too. Play therapy with little plastic figures in sand. She made the small mother and small father stand on opposite sides of a tiny bridge and put a knight in the middle. He makes sure the bridge doesn't fall, she told her therapist, who told me, and I went to my car and wept into a napkin meant for glove compartment emergencies. Lauren had supervised visits twice a month, a room with toys and a clock. The first time, Sophie froze for a beat and then ran to her with a speed that broke and stitched me at once. I sat in a chair and read the same paragraph of the same book for an hour and didn't remember a word of it. On the drive home, Sophie was quiet. I had fun, she said later, then added a quiet but she never finished. We listened to the radio. A song about second chances came on. I turned it down. She turned it back up. I like the drums, she said, and that felt like a mercy not meant for me. One Saturday, Sophie and I ran into Ethan at a farmer's market, his arms full of flowers that weren't apologies. He looked stunned and then careful. I'm not approaching you, he said from a polite distance. We're already here, I said. Might as well be civil. He nodded at Sophie and waved small. She waved back because she is ferociously kind. He told me he was in therapy too, that he had quit the account that sent him into hotel lobbies where he did his most charismatic damage. I don't want to be the guy who only exists between flights, he said, and I believed him, because the alternative required me to be angry all day, and I was tired. Bring home peaches, Sophie told him, unsolicited, and he laughed. Noted, he said. The fuzzy kind, not the sexy kind. After he walked away, Sophie asked, Is he a bad guy? I don't think so, I said. I think some of us learn the hard way what happens when we forget to look at the whole picture. She nodded with the gravitas of a child who has seen both sides of a coin. Can we get kettle corn? She asked. And that was the end of the moral for the day. Everything I had set down to carry a marriage left my hands open for other things. I took my guitar from the hall closet where it had sulked under winter coats. The calluses came back like old friends who forgive without saying the word. I played without trying to be good. I played to see if a room could hold my breath and not complain. I started hiking again, not conquering, just moving through. At Red Rocks at 6 a.m., the stairs turn into a confession. People lap you without meaning to, and you learn to move at a pace that belongs to your legs, not your pride. Sunrise painted the stone like a sermon I would have left if anyone had tried to translate it into doctrine. I wandered into a single parents group that met at the park, expecting to be allergic to it. I wasn't. We sat on benches, watching our kids throw themselves at slides like trust exercises, and we traded intel. Best pediatric dentist, how to explain why in fewer words, how to apologize to children without turning them into your confessor. There was a dad named Miguel who loved to cook and swore by smoked paprika for roasted cauliflower. A mom named June who worked nights at the hospital and taught me the art of the 10-minute nap. I didn't look for romance, not because I believed I was done with love, but because for the first time since I was 22, I was curious about what I liked without checking anyone else's face for confirmation. I bought a ridiculous hat at a Rockies game and wore it proudly while my team lost. I ordered the weird thing on menus. I learned to like my own company so much I became a little protective of it. Sophie noticed. "You're more fun," she announced one night while we built a fort with all the blankets and one strategic broom. "I was always fun," I said. "Not this kind," she replied, staring at me over a flashlight like a search party. "This kind is louder." In the quiet after she fell asleep in the fort under a pile of books we never read, I thought about Lauren, not with the angry heat of before, with a kind of weather report calm. I didn't know if she was happy, if happiness even recognized her with the hair she wore when she wanted to be new. I hoped she found her truth. I hoped I continued to choose mine. The phone call came on a Wednesday that smelled like cut grass. Lauren's lawyer wanted to revisit visitation. "She's requesting unsupervised time," Amanda told me, voice neutral like good rain. "You can oppose. You can negotiate. You can do both." My stomach did the old war drum. "Sophie likes structure," I said, which was how I asked for help without asking. "We'll ask for a slow ramp," Amanda said. "Safety is a feeling, not a ruling." At the hearing, Lauren looked older, not worse. Just like someone who had learned whatever lesson her life forced her to learn, and the tuition wasn't cheatable. "I'm sober," she said softly when the judge asked about stability, surprising me. Not from alcohol, from lies. It was the first time I'd heard her use the right word. The judge nodded toward a graduated plan. Short, unsupervised hours, then longer if all went well. Reviews baked in like guardrails. In the car after, Sophie traced circles on her thigh with a finger, thinking. "I like when Mom laughs," she said. "I don't like when her eyes are shiny." "You can tell her that," I said. "You can tell me that. Your feelings are never too much for this car." She nodded and stared out the window at a boy mowing a too small lawn with a too loud mower. "Can we get ice cream?" she asked. We did. In the line, a teen in a visor dropped a cone and swore, and we all pretended not to hear it. I ordered mint chip because I couldn't remember ever ordering it, and I needed proof I could surprise myself. It tasted like turning around and seeing that the view you'd been ignoring is the one you came for. The first unsupervised visit was 2 hours. Sophie packed her backpack like she was prepping for a long train journey. Book, Band-Aids, a picture of our cat that might as well be a saint. Lauren arrived on time, which mattered. She wore no armor, no complicated blouse, no new perfume. "I want to do this right," she said to both of us, and I heard it without wrapping it in suspicion, which felt like setting down a rock I didn't know I held. When Sophie returned, she smelled like playground and apple slices. "We went to the park," she reported, businesslike. "And Mom cried, but not the sloppy kind." She considered, "Just the quiet kind that gets on your shirt." "Did you feel safe?" I asked, the only question that counted. She nodded. "And Mom said the bridge is stronger now," she added, and I had to turn to put something in the sink that didn't need putting so she wouldn't see my eyes rally. That night, I texted Lauren our usual logistics and a thank you for making it simple. She wrote back, "Thank you for choosing peace." I typed, "It's for her," then added, "It's also for me." Then deleted the second sentence and sent only what I could stand by without footnotes. On a Sunday that wore perfect like a sweater, we made pancakes, not because they fix anything, because they make a morning taste like more morning. Sophie requested chocolate chips, in the shape of a comet, and I laughed and tried anyway. Nick FaceTimed, screen full of his dog and a plant he named Barbara for reasons we never got to, and Sophie gave a tour of our fort before it collapsed impressively. After breakfast, we walked to Wash Park. The lake wore ducks like casual jewelry. A wedding party took photos near a willow that scene promises it no longer tries to count. A kid practiced a trumpet badly under a tree, and the sound was rude and perfect. Sophie ran ahead, hair a flag. I watched her and felt the thing you feel when a world that hurt you begins to hold you differently, like a pair of shoes finally broken in. like the first breath after a long dive, like the word home growing an extra room. I thought about the first 2 lines of this story, about the morning haze and the man I was before a phone call at 7:43. I wondered if I would recognize him if he sat next to me on a bench. I decided I'd nod, polite, and then keep looking forward. At dinner, Sophie asked, "What happens next?" Because that's what 6-year-olds ask when they don't know. Stories don't always wrap. "We keep doing good days," I said, "and okay days, and some bad ones too, and we eat pancakes on Sundays. And we make circles, not moons," she added, a tyrant about banana shapes. "And I learned to flip without dropping one on the floor," I promised, unreasonable optimism in my voice. After she fell asleep, I pulled the guitar from the corner and played a melody I didn't recognize. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. It was mine. I thought about calling someone to tell them, a reflex still alive. I didn't. I sat in the room where my life happens and let the song end on its own. Out on the porch, the crickets performed their choir. A couple walked by with a stroller and a dog that walked itself. Somewhere, someone grilled something decisive. The sky went from pink to serious. I thought of Lauren. Not with a wish, not with a curse, but with a nod. A human in another story that once braided into mine. I hoped she was what she said she wanted. Awake. Inside, on the table, a calendar with stars and hearts and a smudge where Sophie dropped a blueberry. Tomorrow's box was empty and wide open. I found a pen and drew a tiny square in the corner. Then I wrote, "Pancakes," again, then smaller, guitar, then smaller still. Keep going.